Well, hello back, folks. Really Love Guitars, Sam here, with what I can tell you is going to be a noisy beastie. So, woohoo! Don't mind the tone. I don't know what setting that's on the old Fender there, but anyway, point is, we've got a cream crackered jack socket on this bass. So Connor's Mexican Fender bass, and we're going to do a fret level on it because he's starting with a position that he would like the reaction that low, if it will go that low where it's currently set, and it hasn't been played for a long time. He was a little concerned about the pickups, but they just look like they've picked up rust of ages, so I'll test them once we've changed the socket to make sure they are still working. They sound like they're pretty okay, just not on that channel. It's hard to get a clean channel on that Fender. Anyway, sorry, not concentrating on the filming. Going to replace the screws here because they're kind of worn out and rusty and stuff, and get some fresh ones in there. New jack, which is here, quality one. Oh, I have to go and find the correct screws to go on it. New screws, new little screws, and we'll do some leveling, and then we'll do some put the new strings on, and then give it an overall clean. Put some fresh felts on here and get them tightened up in position because they've kind of slipped off. But it's a straightforward guitar, nothing other than that showing up as wrong with it. It just really needs it's just in for a refresh, make sure everything's okay, and yeah, a bit of leveling if possible to get rid of what is a little bit of sort of slap, which are, you know, in a sense, basses, you know, don't necessarily we'll see what we can do. We can do a very light level and get as much of that alleviated as possible. So it's a kind of refresh treat to himself for getting it out of the attic and getting stuck back into it. So it's not going to be a long drawn out one, but we've got the bass length thingy. I'm just going to make sure I'm somewhere near in tune. Okay, so I'm going to start by marking up the frets because we can go straight into leveling with the old strings on. Might as well use them for that. And like I said, this is just to try and alleviate some of the little bit of choky, not choky exactly, but what I would call zizzing. So the technique is the same as with the electric guitar, and it's going to work the same sort of way. I've got my bass sized banana here. Interestingly, I've been recommending the U-channel truss rod for a while now, and it's turned out, or I've discovered that, actually let's slack these off first, discovered that the new versions that are only ones available now, in fact, have a slightly different sized adjuster cylinder on the end, and this, by the way, we'll also get rid of some fret wear on here. But yeah, so they've changed the size of the cylinder, which means that it's larger and it intrudes into the path of the cutting surface. So when well, I don't know quite why they've done that, but if I can't find alternatives, then what I have to do is do some adjustments, because I offer a sort of kit for sale. Yeah, so I have to do some grinding of this down here, which is a shame. This one's the right size. I'm kind of half wondering whether I couldn't find some replacements that fitted. I probably will do check when I've got a couple on order and when they come in, because I basically was offering this kit and I had a few select customers come forward and wanted it, and so either the first one I did some grinding of the end bit down manually, but the alternative is that I find a smaller one, so I'll wait till the new one arrives. See, this original one I used for the electric guitar, if I can get it out of here, that's very, whoops, comes apart quite easily, but that's a very small adjuster, and you can see that it's well below the level. Well below the level. It's a great big, it's about 3 mils between the cutting surface here and the level of that. This one is similar, although it nearly comes into play, so it's nearly the same level as the cutting surface, and the new ones are larger and they stick out into the cutting surface, so I'm going to either have to adjust each one manually or find a smaller adjuster. But I guess the thing to try out is to see whether a smaller adjuster anyway fits on this thing, or whether the threaded rod is the same. But it's not the end of the world, because you can grind them down to size, and providing they work for what we're intending them for, then it's fine. If they've been ground, nobody minds. Okay, so we are under tension. I'll come back to the jack socket later, once we've done the strings and taken them off. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get my calibration done in the same way as I would before. 3 points, same process. And I'll slack this off. More, so it's very similar. Oh, it's the same as the 6 string, only longer. Okay, that will be good. And so we still have to take off the. Now somebody actually the other day said, "I'm surprised that you don't put a bit of protective tape on there." So, to give you an example, I'll put a bit of protective tape in here, like so. I've never damaged the side of the thing, but just to please people, and then I will just push this apart. Now I probably need a slightly bigger piece of, wider piece of stuff, and I've got some rubber here, but I'm not quite sure whether it's going to keep its strength over a longer piece. So let's see if I can cut a bit. Let's get a surface to cut on, and we will go to there. Keep that. So hope you all are well. It's been I've had a tough few days. It was my birthday yesterday, so but that isn't why. I was 61 yesterday. 61. I mean, that's quite old. I'm sure you'll agree. But that's not why. This week, all the run up to this week, I've been basically preparing for a presentation, to object to a planning application in our local village, and it's a complicated thing in a sense, that as all planning always is, but the idea, what kind of keep a long story shortish, the government states that if a developer is given permission to develop housing on a greenfield piece of land site near a village, then they only get permission by giving back something to the village, and they call such a site a rural exception site. In other words, you're not normally allowed to develop housing on a greenfield, but this is there is a thing called a rural exception site, in which case if you give back value to the village in terms of affordable housing, and that's always, I think that's pretty much always the trade-off, you are permitted, or you can get permission to develop housing. And the idea is that you have to meet in supplying affordable housing, you have to meet local housing need, and so that the village evidently gets something back for sacrificing that green field rural site. And so of course it's not massively in the developer's interest to provide affordable housing, because it's at below market value, and of course they will do it if it buys them the right to develop the land. So they pay for the affordable housing they're forced, inverted commas, to deliver by being allowed to include a certain number of market value houses too. So they come forward with a plan, and it says, we will provide this many affordable, offset by this many market value to pay for the affordable, and the idea is that's supposed to tally with local need, and we had got a survey to pin down what local need was, and paid a suitable and professional organisation to do that, and we had a figure of what was needed, and so the application came in, and our job as part of the parish council, my job, was to do my utmost. There's a couple of really low frets here, which doesn't help it playing without buzz. Anyway, my job as part of the parish council was to represent the village, who didn't want a large development, and they wanted our jobs to ensure that whatever was proposed delivered the proven local need. Pretty good, but it's taken some, sorry, I'll get back to the story, but it's taken some little bit of work there. You see there's a low spot there, and a group of high frets there, a couple of low frets there, higher there, a low spot here. So the natural topography of the board is not in any way, it never is, beautifully straight. The tool finds out the bumps and hills and bumps, and those are what get in the way of a low action playing freely. But that's cool. So we've alleviated the fret slap, as I would call it, over there. Now this on a bass is going to be harder to get this off to one side. I'm going to see if I can achieve it. Anyway, yeah. So that's what I took it on myself as my job, particularly since I and some others had been elected on a mandate to do exactly that, ensure that housing developed on that site was matched very closely, was as little as was necessary to meet that local housing need, and obviously make it viable for the developer to do it. And so that's been our work the whole time. And this application came in, and it was for more houses than were identified. It offered more local, more affordable housing than the needs survey identified, and it was offering the wrong kind, but it was kind of obvious that it was doing that. It met some of our needs, but the majority were of a larger type. And because the larger type houses, even if they're sold at an affordable, reduced price, they still make, they return more money to the developer. So the bottom line of the story is while the needs assessment said we needed predominantly, let's say for argument's sake, a predominance of the 7, we needed the majority ideally would be low cost 2-bedroom homes, which there's a maximum size that a newcomer, a youngster or a couple could reasonably get access onto the housing ladder, or above that it gets harder and harder. And that's what the need was found to be by asking local people and their offsprings. Better than it was, just a little bit more up here. It was basically ended up offering to deliver 3 of the 7 we needed, matching the types we needed, and the remainder it offered of the 10 affordable homes it planned to offer were of a higher number of bedrooms, which, as I say, more than anything suited the developer's needs. And if in a sense they're not proven need, so they don't really meet the requirement, but it seems like the planning committee and the borough council didn't really care too much about that, which I find pretty disappointing, since the trade-off really is between the village losing the greenfield rural environment and supposedly the legislation, the policy, is supposed to give the village back a fair exchange in return. So it turns out that the nearest to calling it fair is that the village is promised currently 3/7 of what the survey said it needed, and the remainder, including the excess, are not needed according to the survey. So it's paying a heavier price than I was comfortable paying, and a higher price than I believe it should have paid. But it got accepted, and I found it quite depressing that it seemed to me that the council sort of didn't really see the whole thing in a 3-dimensional way. They just kind of they sort of fudged their way round every little discrepancy. So, for example, the main qualifier, does this meet local need? That's the sort of the crux of the what we call it, the policy that decides whether the developer has permission to tear up this green field or not. The first one, does it meet and supply local housing, proven local housing need? And if the answer is no, or if the answer is yes, then it then goes a bit further, and you consider, well, the next question is, if your proposal is answering directly, fulfilling proven local need, then does the proposal, the mix or the balance, is it minimum of 60% of the needed affordable homes and maximum 40, because that's a government's imposed limit to prevent the developer from profiteering, the idea is. But the point is, you only ask that question is only relevant providing the first test is met. Is it explicitly meeting the proven local affordable housing need? And the answer is it isn't already. It's only providing 3 of the 4, and it's going overboard to provide kinds of affordable housing that isn't needed, but evidently makes the proposition profitable for the developer. So it hasn't passed the first one in our eyes, but the committee didn't give that it didn't raise that particular question out. So it didn't put those things in a hierarchical order. You must pass this to ask the next question about mix, and then the third issue that gets asked afterwards, if all the above are met, the final question is, probably the last of the three questions is this financially viable? You know, are you convinced in the viability assessments? And you know, of course, you don't even make them if you're not meeting need, because you're not meeting the first gateway. You're not passing the first gate. So why cost something that's provided to you if it fails at the first hurdle? It's like, you know, you asked for, you know, a bike shed and you get Disney World. Well, why bother spending weeks asking whether they can, you know, they've priced up the different components of Disney World when all that you actually need is a bike shed and they haven't offered to supply it. So, yeah, it bugged me that they not only didn't they spot the deviation from policy in each of those tests at each level, but they didn't treat them as a set of level hierarchical qualifiers or gateways. So they just, you know, we didn't, you know, we think we can fudge that one, or well, it sort of meets. You know, so because they saw X number of affordable homes, they say to themselves, yeah, that sort of meets the requirement because it's delivering 10 affordable homes. Well, it isn't delivering 10 that were needed, but hey, it delivers affordable homes, lots of them. So we'll tick that box, and then on they go into the next thing. Is it 60%? And it wasn't. And then they decided to create a sort of product that isn't even needed. Again, it's not in the housing survey, housing needs assessment, so it's not a proven need, but they decide to offer what they call 2 affordable self-build plots. And they say, well, that means that, you know, the percentage is now over 60 of affordable products. Yes, but they're not affordable products that were needed or proven need in the survey. So you're just providing something just to make that suits you, doesn't suit the village, just to cross the line so you can get permission. So that was pretty depressing. So they didn't spot that, and they argued. They were convinced, oh, that's all right, that's sort of okay. You know, we can add those two things now. It's 60%, isn't it? So on we go. You know, at no time keeping in mind what the cost of this fudge is. You know, well, the cost is, guess who to who? It's to the village, who lose their greenfield and they don't get back the amount of affordable housing they need. We've got a slightly low spot here, which is why this has got a little bit more buzz. It's not bad on plucking it, but trying to get it to do it. So the low frets here, and all the way across there's been a little low patch here, along with a slightly low patch up here. Yeah. So anyway, so they didn't approach it with that sort of the importance. They seem to let go of the importance of the whole policy and what it was for, which is this rural trade-off, and they just kind of seem to just fudge everything with a view to getting it approved. And partly the pressure is that the local borough, who's the people doing the planning approval or rejection, they have borough targets for affordable housing. So if somebody over-delivers affordable housing in a village that doesn't need it, the borough doesn't mind, because it goes, well, we've got an overall target in the borough, and that will tick 4 more off our books. Even if the village doesn't need it, we'll accept it because that achieves something, you know, that we need doing. So, and of course, the people who pay for that indulgence is the village. So we did the best we could. We've held it off for exploitation on that site, I would call it, for nearly 5 years since they originally tried to overdevelop it, and it's been a hard fight all the way through because there's some vested interest in the village who insist on. It's interesting because the people who are fighting like crazy to agree to this particular proposal, if I were to ask them, do you not mind that it doesn't deliver, you know, it fails to deliver, or it only delivers 3 out of 7 affordable homes that the survey shows are needed? They don't have an answer to that. They go, no, they'd probably say, no, we just want more affordable homes, just more affordable homes, more of the merrier. It's a kind of quantity thing. so that the developer who's offering them 10 affordable homes with a preponderance of more expensive 3 and 4 bedroom homes, which pretty much no local youngster would ever be able to afford. The people who've been fighting us for the last 5 years, who seem to be obsessed with selling and developing on this one particular field, they don't mind that. They somehow think that will benefit their nephews and nieces or their grandchildren or something, you know. But the reality is that I can't see how any of their local youngsters would benefit from a quote-unquote affordable 4-bedroom house or 3-bedroom house. You know, that's saying, oh, that's 275 instead of 300,000. Well, that's not really going to help anyone I know get a foot on a ladder. But anyway, so it's been very difficult in this time to, you know, it's led to a lot of personal abuse being thrown at us, despite having a strong backing of a majority of people in the village. The people with interests shout very loud, and so it's been very abusive, and it's very hard to know what they actually want, other than kind of anything. Well, what they've wanted is, what's been consistent all the way through, is developing on that particular site. So it leads you to kind of think, well, what is the motivation then? That's pretty good, actually. We've got a little low spot here still, and we haven't even touched it with the banana, and we've lowered the frets up here, which were fairly uneven, but there's a low spot there too. But more or less, we've improved it for that action that's set. So anyway, I might just do a tiny bit more, since it hasn't cut through at all onto this low spot. I might just tweak it a bit more. Yeah, so the point is, we've put in a lot of hard work to do. You know, again, the funny thing, detractors never take you at your word. They always know better than you what you're doing things for. So I've lost track of the times I've said, all I care about is that we got involved in it because we felt the process had been hijacked a bit by people who only wanted to develop on this one particular spot of land, against the will of majority. And our statement, a few of us that stood together at the same time for election, our commitment was that, and I hold to it, is that I would accept the development being anywhere that the evidence said was right and that met the amount of exact type and number of affordable homes that the village required. And if that happened to be, as it was very likely to be, directly outside the back of my house, where we rent a housing association place, you know, and so you could say, by fighting against this other site, I was actually in very real danger of having, if that was defeated, then it would come back and it would very likely be directly outside of my back window. So, you know, anyone who would accuse me of being a NIMBY couldn't quite get their heads around the fact that I would be far, if I was a NIMBY, I would be absolutely going along with it being over in this particular field, you know, the one we've been arguing against, and because it would be pretty much out of my sight. It certainly wouldn't be directly in front of me, and I'd be far away. I wouldn't be affected by it. So, but yet somehow, to people who are hell bent on deciding that they know what you want, they insist that you're doing it out of NIMBYism, and I just find that funny. Anyway, so the decision went that way, and as far as I can see, there's nothing I can do further. I've done my work and tried my best, and like I said, had it been able to be, had we turned out that the better place for the village was directly behind my house, I would have absolutely been true to my word and accepted it there because it was the right thing for the village. But I would, you know, my commitment was to make sure that it was documented from the beginning. The whole process was followed properly, which it wasn't the first time. You know, and that the site was the right one, put forward in the right way, evidenced as being the appropriate one to develop on, and that it enjoyed the backing of the village, proven, you know, survey support of the village. So all of those things, that's fine by me. I would take that as the proof, you know, the proof that was the right thing to do. And like I said, if it had been right outside my place, I would have gone along with that, because I would have known better than anyone else that that was, you know, the evidence pointed it to it being the right place to do it for the right reasons, because it would deliver what the village needed. Anyway, so that's kind of history now, really. I think you know, there aren't that many ways to challenge it. There is what they call a judicial review or something, but it's horrendously expensive and technical, and I'm not sure if it would make a difference. Anyway, so yeah, I accept that I've done whatever I can, and if the council has, basically the council is the approving body, and if they say that's their take on it, then that's their take, and basically we can't really do much else about it. So I think I will now support my fellow councillors getting the neighbourhood plan finished, which will be a lot simpler now, because it won't really have any issues to discuss about proposed sites for further, because we'll have hit all of our extra housing targets in that one development, or we've exceeded them, but anyway, so we certainly won't need any more. In that case, we can finish the neighbourhood plan. It'll be a fairly meaningless document in many ways, because its real purpose is to give the village a strong, or the residents a strong say in housing, in the development in the village, and unfortunately we haven't had the ability to do that. So yeah, and then I think I will step back from the role, because it's in truth it's been a lot of abuse for very little practical benefit for the village or anything. So here you see the innards of our Mexico P bass, and very simple, straightforward. Pickups are there. I don't know what's gone wrong with the jack, but it's definitely not happy. What we can do is spray some contact cleaner into the pot. There's no broken wires there. The grounding and everything looks good. I mean, the jack looks okay from this position, but it's certainly not working properly. So if I get me out a socket with included washer and nut and so on, and we'll exchange that new one, a nice Nutric quality one, and we'll swap it out. Yeah, it's hard to know what's conked on this. So we've got two earths going to the jack and the one output from the volume pot. Now the question about pickups, Conor, if we look under here, the question about pickups is, with an old guitar, you will get rust on the pole pieces because they're ferrous, and really there's not a lot you can do to clean them up, other than you can kind of scrape them clean, but well, there's a bit of, somebody's filled in, there's a bit of toothpick filling going on in here to make things grip, so they've worn out a bit over the years. Sorry, I'm terrible camera work. See a little bit of filling. So we've had a few loose things over the years, needed filling. Yeah, anyway, so it's not a, it's a very common thing that old pickups from this era will, with a bit of moisture in the air, will end up looking rusty. And it's a combination of, actually I think they're all slightly beveled. So yeah, but you don't really, well, some people wood, and I have in the past grabbed hold of them and, you know, scratched them and scraped them with wire wool and not wire wool, sandpaper and stuff, or, you know, a scratchy thing. But you're just, all you're doing is you're going back to raw metal, because I think there's a bit of chrome on here, and eventually it's corroded off. But I think what we'll do is, first of all, we'll get rid of this jack and we'll warm up the soldering iron, ready for reconnection. We'll get a bit of solder ready. We'll also get our meter so we can just check the pickup's output. Yeah, anyway, that's probably going to be the last of the parish council stories. Am I glad I did it over the years? Yeah, I mean, it's been an interesting experience. Do I think local democracy, the way it's configured at the moment, is doomed? Oh yeah, absolutely. It's the most unrewarding, vile experience. It's really abusive. So we've got 482 coming out here, and that's with full open, full tone. So, whoops, 482, 475 with the tone wide open. I wonder if that does make any difference. Tone round off, 480, 475. Shouldn't be any different. Anyway, so they look okay. They're just probably a bit crackly from lack of use, but the output is about right. 4.5 killer ohms. Let's put a bit of this down here, under here. So there's not a lot of room to work in, but what we'll do is we'll take off the connections here first, and then we'll remove the socket. Let's get the adjustable spanner. Actually, we'll probably just take it off first. We get a bit more room. When you use, if you have got scratchy pots, which are old usually, then the best way is to you can use, or do certainly use, some contact cleaner, but even contact cleaner won't solve the problem exactly. You need to run the volume pot or the tone pot backwards and forwards numerous times in order to clean up the surface, because it's the surfaces have got caked over time usually, and that makes a sort of sticky mess that traps oil and dirt, and together they stop the thing making a good connection. So you really want to use the contact cleaner as well as why is this so difficult to get up? They hook this around in some sort of way. I think they have verily. Might have to cut this off. It's so hooked up. It's very difficult to grab anything here. When you tie a knot in it like this, it's very difficult to remove. Oh, a ragged mess. But anyway, that's all be fixable. These bent round, these are, so it's all right, but it's a good way to do it in the beginning, but it makes removing it very difficult because you haven't got anything really to grab hold of. This isn't strong enough to allow me to put a load of leverage on, so we'll put that off to one side with its associated spare bits. We'll keep that one. I'll tidy up the wires before we put the new one on. Okay, so this is let's cut back. yeah, so it's been a good good experience, and I've enjoyed. I'm proud of the hard work we did up against a fair bit of abuse, but I am very disheartened by the state of politics, if you like, with I don't see why anyone would get involved with it. I mean, I got involved with it motivated very much by a strong sense of principle, but had I not had that, along with some self-confidence to be involved, I can't see why I would have got involved in it. It's a thankless, where there's property, money, people wanting to sell land and capitalize on it and so on and so forth. It's a horrendously pressurized environment, and it's almost guaranteed to lead to an extreme amount of bad blood. Wow. Chinook. Yay. Well, it's not exactly a Chinook, but it's the other one, the Air Force one. I forget what it's called. The twin rotor thing. Good on them. Anyway, yeah, so do worry for the future of that, public involvement. Like I say, I don't see myself doing it again, getting involved again. Too much misery. And the fact that the culture that we came into was one of bullying and abuse, because there's so much involved, obviously. I mean, nobody's completely naive about it, but there's so much abuse and bullying already baked in to the land ownership and interests. It's almost a guaranteed recipe for unhappiness. I tell you what I'm going to do, by the way, before I finish doing this, I'm going to put some low grip stuff, thread lock on it, and I mean low viscosity, low strength is the word I'm looking for. It just help to prevent this coming undone and moving. Yeah, so yeah, it's a highly pressurized environment, as is any kind of local politics, where when any town, in any village, you name it, there is a whole ton of interests at play, conflicting interests at play, and naturally, unfortunately, it will tend quite naturally to bring out the worst in people. I'm sorry to say, but it creates a high likelihood of problems. And I think the problem I found with it is that there's no explicit focus on that. There's no. Everyone has this thing where they sort of talk about the Nolan principles, and it's really aimed at what councillors and politicians should be like. Actually, the problem I've found is that as much as the problem with some councillors has been the problem with the public, who don't think there is any behavioural expectation of them in local political life, and that's pretty depressing, really. I've found, because it absolutely should require of them to conduct themselves. There should be an expectation that the public also has a behavioural norm to aspire to. This double wire here is going to be actually very difficult to get through into the hole in here, so I'm going to have to attach it. I don't think I can trim it back so it does. Sometimes you can just get a thin little bit that will go through, but maybe not. Yeah, so I genuinely think until there is a substantial change, and I don't think there will be. It's too fluffy and too challenging, this thing about looking at our behaviour and modifying it for the benefit of better. Now this just doesn't want to go on through the hole, so I'm going to do it to the side. A nice big juicy grip. There we go. Yeah, so I don't really ever see that changing much for the reasons I said, but it's a pity. Oops. No, I don't fancy it again. Let's get the contact cleaner, electrical contact cleaner. Now, I used a bit of this the other day on a Burns Bison, not a vintage, a reissue Burns Bison, and sadly, it caused some of the paint on the numbers to come off, and this hasn't got numbers, thankfully, and I'm making sure it's doing it over the cavity as well. But as I say, the thing to do is once you've got some stuff on there, is just make sure you do lots of turns, because that's the best way to clean it. Okay. So not a lot of room in this chassis, if you look under here, to get things back in. It's a bit of a tight mix, and hopefully we can get it all back on without any. It's a very tight fit, but it does fit in place, thankfully. So before I close up the patient, what I want to naturally do is get the amp, make a lot of noise, plug this back in. Now when we put that in, we don't know how the lug on the inside is connecting, whether it's connecting anything it shouldn't be. Sometimes that can be the problem with why something's noisy. This seems okay. Okay, we're not hearing anything just yet. Yep. Nice. Repaired. So whatever the problem was on the old one, it was definitely faulty. That's repaired it. Hold that down. Okay. So that's good. Let's turn off the soldering iron. That's part of it's done. So what I'll do is put away the electrical bits and bobs, solder, and so yeah, the next part will be really more about cleaning everything up and polishing and re-crowning the frets and then polishing them in that order. So that's pretty standard, straightforward stuff. But if we look down here, we've got a bit of a grubby fingerboard, which we'll clean up as we kind of finish up, rather than now. Let's just get rid of the fret leveling materials. It's all out of the way. Fret leveling thing is up there. That's the spare original jack, which will come back with the guitar. Now, I was just looking at this. Having done the action, I've got it recorded down here on the board, so I can recreate it. It might be a good thing to, while we're here, I can't clean up these. I've said I'm not going to clean up the what's-its, but there's no reason why we shouldn't clean up the bridge while we're at it. So that could be a simple take-apart job. There's a bit of damage to the screw heads. They're not, one of them at least, there's a couple of them, it's not in perfect condition. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. Just a little bit rounded or distorted from either being too tight or being done up too tight. But if we take this up, we can at least give it a clean the components, put it back fresh looking, and then we can clean the body as well. It's a very loose fit, most of these screws. So okay, so I actually haven't got anywhere to hang this up at the moment. So if we come to here, We can take these off one by one. No, this is well, there's a mark where the things were. We can intonate anyway afterwards, so that's not a bad thing. So I'm just going to put that there and there. As soon as you take off saddles like this, what you do find is that they tend to move one way or another, and even if you don't deliberately address or attack the grub screws in the saddle barrel here, weirdly enough you'll find them I'm losing track. Which way round is this? This way. Help. No, it's this way. Two on the inside, is it? Oh, I'm losing my mind. This is through that side, through the left. Keep that the right way up, will you? Thank you. Yeah, it can always move. Grub screws always move on their own. So always expect them to move, and that means, of course, your action will suddenly be different. But since I took a reading of the G and the low E, it means that we'll be able to recreate it the way it was before. So this doesn't need much of a clean, but it's impossible to get cleaned up without getting the barrels out of the way. The barrels are grubby with age, but I'm not sure I would struggle to try and clean them up too much. I mean, that's a nice sort of dust-free bit here, and then we can get the dust out from around the edge of the thing. Now we also have to just make sure that when we do put it back down, the wire, the grounding wire, is still proud. Put it on like so. Line it up. Torque is currently on 2, which is very light. We'll just let it line up. Now that's why that one was loose, is because there's a bit of looseness on those two. So actually this is, I'm not comfortable just fixing that way. The holes are stripped out on here, so they do need a bit of a fill assistance. Fill needs to assist. Otherwise I'll just feel nervous that they're loose, and there'd be some risk of the pull of the strings causing this bridge to lift up or something undesirable. So I don't want to live with that. So to ensure that doesn't happen, we'll get some filler thingies. What do we call them? Yeah, bits of this in there, and then we'll drill new pilot holes. So just a little detour, but I mean, it's a small detail that you want to get right. And this, the bridge has maybe been on and off a few times in the past, and with the result that the screws of the wood has just stripped a little bit. So if I just zoom in and see what we're doing there. So first of all, I'm just going to get a little bit of glue into each of these holes. As I was doing this, I'm thinking, why am I putting glue into string through holes? And they're not string through holes, they're anchor holes. Samuel, get real. Right, that's that. And then we have a bit of this stuff, which we'll shove in like so, and we'll snip it off. Actually, what we'll do is we'll snip it with this one, the fret puller, which gives a really nice flush to the ground chopping. And then we'll just use a bit of this. It's not perfect, it's sort of splayed it out a little bit. But as you can see, I'll get all enough wood in there, and then I'll just make probably won't even need a pilot hole, but we'll put one in just in case. So what I'll do is this. I can't be bothered trying to do it that way. So we'll put them all in like so. Cut a little bit back, like so. I'm dipping the doweling in glue before I push it in, so it's glue plus some glue, and together, even if I screw the bridge in now and straight away, the glue will then harden up and the whole thing will be nice and firm. So actually, while I've got glue and dowel to hand, it makes sense to check the fit of these things here, strap buttons, and if there's any looseness in them at all, we either try and do them up once and for all, and if they do up without any problem, well, actually, let's just check them. The reason, sorry, you can't see anything here. Come back. You can't see what I'm seeing. This is the worst camera where I'm in a cinch with the guitar, and I'm basically, stay there, I'm going to put new felts on in both cases, and I'm going to use double the felt just to try and get it to stay or look better than it did. So I think this has still got a tight fit, so I will now check it and be sure. Don't know what you can see exactly, but okay, it's interesting that it doesn't want to grab this felt in a easy straight way. It wants to kick off to one side. Now I think this is not got enough grip, so I will block these out with a bit of timber, because otherwise we're just going to have the same problem going on there. I'll just load up the dowel this side here and shove it in. So it's a good thing to do if you're already in that place with the dowel and the glue. And what I'll do is I'll just get the little hammer and tap it to make sure it's in. Sorry about the view if it's no good. Okay, that's good. And cut it flush. Throw away the bit on there. Wipe this back. So that's going to be nice, and in fact it will go into here because it's all nice and soft at the moment. This will go into here without any major problem, and it will bite very well. But holding it in one place is quite difficult. Trying to find the right angle to come at it from. Come along. Okay, I'm going to make a start hole a minute. Stay there. Grab my, thank you, grab my, what's this thing called? Scribe. And make a hole, pilot hole as such in there. Feels nice and solid. And then we'll do the same here to be sure. What's happened here? This is a different kind of screw altogether. Oh yes. Don't know what that is, but it isn't the same screw for sure. Do a similar thing here if we can. Cut off long run out of wrist strength there. Tap it in. Very good. Snip off flush, wherever that went. Wipe up. Make it, oh, let's go a bit flusher. Okay. Then make a hole. Like so. Put in some new felts, like so. I'm not sure I like that screw at all. There's something not at all good about it. Well, it sort of works, but it didn't work the first time I tried it like that. Let's trust it again. Okay. Interesting. It's like its original hole has been drilled in sideways. Oops. Let's just hand tighten this. Let's see if we get a better felt finish. Get your felts into place. Okay. Why is this? It's an odd. That is a weird. That is so weird. Let's try a different one. I don't think that's going to work, is it? Let's try this one. Can you give me a bite? Yes. Okay. Okay, that's a bit better. Ouch. Done. Fine. Sorry about the terrible camera work. Let's get all this gluey stuff well out of the way. Glue stuff gone. Now I need another piece of kitchen roll, and we'll just snip back the fills from here. What can you see? I'm sorry about the view. Right, so snip this back flush. Watch out for shooting bits of dowel. Now it might have some issues coming up with the holes for the scratch plate screws, but I'm thinking they may be just a little larger than the originals, so hopefully they'll find better footing. Right. So once again I will make an initial hole in there. Now this one could probably do with a small pilot hole rather than the way I did the other one. The strap, what's it? So I will give this one a very small vertical pilot hole thingy. Like so. muddy. Get rid of the surplus glue. Now this needs to go back in there. Alright, so always remember when you put the bridge back on, make sure the plate touches the wire. Move this out of the way. Right. Nice and solid now. Lovely. Solid, solid, solid. Solid as a rock. That's where this love is. That's where you've got. Will I get done by the copyright people? Ashford and Simpson, 1978 or 9 or something. 'Cause we're solid. Solid as a rock. Put the ferrule back in. Okay, so let us now do the thing with some fresh screws. Left all the rusty ones elsewhere, or have I done that the other way around? Are these the rusty ones? They appear to be. So let's put the decent ones on and do that. I will hold this flat. So put that thing down to low, the torque setting down to low, down to low. Right, so once I've done these, I'll give everything a clean. Actually, no, I won't. I'll do this on 2. I'll hold off cleaning because we need to do it after the crowning of the frets and the polish. So we'll put all these on, then we'll do the neck work. And once we've done that, we'll be ready to re-string with fresh strings and try it out. Yeah, some of these holes are worn, but they're still enough to hold them down. That was quite tight, so back off a bit, thank you. I am 1, 2, 3 screws short of a picnic. Hang on a minute, why is that not sitting down? There's a wire in the way, that's why. Spotted. Get you into the correct place. Come along. Thank you. Jolly good. Let's find the missing. There's 2 more. 1, 2, 3 more. Let's find one good one. No, let's find another one then. 2, 3. I'll throw these, oh no, I won't throw them away, I'll give them back with the original, because everybody likes to keep their original pieces, because for some people Fender scratch plate screws, pickguard screws, matter. These are probably Chinese that I'm using, but they're fresher looking and they're rejuvenated. So what I'll do is I'll leave that off because I want to clean the headstock front before. So I'll get a little bag for the spare parts, and we shall be all right. I'll give the bridge bits a rub down off camera a bit later, but meanwhile it's time now to focus on coming down this end, because we're going to do the crowning and polishing part. So fun part of the whole deal. To do it, we will just mark up the frets again so that we can see what we're doing with the crowning file. So going back to the frets on this, I commented on somebody's comment on Facebook today, where in a certain site somebody was talking about uneven frets, and some know-it-all said the only reason you've got uneven frets is because somebody's a bad, or the fretting was bad. And unfortunately, that person really doesn't get what they is talking about. It's true that fretting is, well, in my opinion, it's an imprecise science. It's not a science; it's a trade. It's a craft, but it's a bit imprecise, so it's crude. So there's no way you could microscopically be certain to get all the frets in at exactly the same pressure as each other. So there can be variances in there, but very few people. I will never expect to get, when I fret something, I never expect a complete microscopically perfect level frets. And I don't know anyone else who can, but the real reason, in my experience of doing hundreds and thousands of setups and refrets, is the frets are uneven, as on this guitar, because the fingerboard under load is uneven. It's probably a bit uneven, not under load, just relaxed like this, but it's certainly more uneven when it's under load. And since it's played under load, then it's always going to be under load. And as you can see from the fret leveling tool, showed us that there were parts of this neck that were low relative to the other parts. So it's got its own kind of up and down hills and valleys topography, and that has more to do with the so-called unevenness of frets than somebody's ability in tapping the frets in. So it's better to think that occasionally somebody doesn't, I don't like the way this is annoying me, occasionally somebody fails to tap a fret all the way in, or there's some obstruction in the fret slot or whatever preventing it. But most of the time, when frets are first tapped in, they tend to be more or less as even as they're going to be. And the differences between them when you come to level them, my experience is much more about the inherent topography of the neck wood, the fingerboard, both relaxed and under compression, load and compression. Obviously the hills and valleys seem to accentuate more when it's under load than when it's relaxed, but it isn't certain. It's not set in stone like that. But anyway, that's what throws the frets out of line with each other. And so what I'm doing here is, because I've done it with the neck under load, when I get them, where I get them to is a relative levelness due to with the neck compressed and under load. So that's why I know it can be a little bit more accurate than a standard traditional system of fret leveling. That's why I use this method. Better for me from that point of view. So what I'm hitting now is a couple of high frets at this end, which take more recrowning than the lighter touched or basically almost completely untouched ones. So anyway, today's a bit of a easing back into work sort of day for me, because being my birthday yesterday, I permitted myself time at leisure. Not that we did anything particularly exciting or fabulous, but just went and visited my dad and stepmum briefly. Tea and cakes, you know how it goes. But it just, yeah, I've been kind of getting over the amount of time and mental effort put into that parish council business with the housing, and so it's been good to have a couple of days of downtime. But I got a lot to do, so I wanted to get up and running again before this weekend, and it's probably just as good a time to do it since the weather's still a bit lousy for British spring or summer, which we're nearly, I mean, we're only a month from midsummer, can you believe? I mean, and we're still tanking it down with rain, wearing coats to go anywhere. I sat out in the hammock for an hour, or lay in the hammock for an hour today, under grey skies mostly, and because it's nice being out in the fresh air. But you know, I was kind of fully dressed, me. So that's the basic recrowning done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean, just a bit of a clean, initial clean of the frets and the fingerboard. I'm going to clean it again afterwards, but the reason I'm just doing this is it gets off the majority of the black marker pen, and I can sort of concentrate on that before I do the sanding part. So it does bring off a load of muck, most of it the marker pen, but it goes some way to cleaning the fingerboard as well of lots of grease. So some people will go, I never level frets on basses. I don't, and it's the old thing about, if the customer has the bass set at a certain level and it has a bit of excessive rattle or slap, as I would call it, fret slap, then there's no harm in doing a little bit of leveling to, what it does is basically it goes towards allowing you to keep the playing action where it is, and reduce the slap or buzz. So, you know, of course on a bass you could say, well, most basses are played higher than that, Sam, so go and put it back to Fender's spec and then it will all be okay and you won't need to fret level. Well, that's precisely true, but if the customer likes the idea of having it at the lower action, then that's what the leveling is all about. It's about that little bit of precision tweaking, so you don't have to compromise the action and you can have more of the low level if that's how you prefer it. And of course not everybody does, and of course some people hate the feel of a very low action on any instrument, whether it's a bass or a six string, and that's perfectly fine too. But most of my work has been and tends to be about low action, low and light action. So you know, it's not a problem. If it ain't for you, then it ain't for you, and we can chuckle about it, and no harm, no hard feelings. But you know, clearly some people do like it that way, and that's what I aim to provide. So I'm just going to clean off as much of the dust or any stuff. I'll do it again mainly afterwards, but this is just to see if there's anything really getting in the way. So now I'm going to use masking tape to mask off the fingerboard on this guitar, and I think every time I see a Fender American or Mexican, I go into the sort of freak out and go into paroxysms of warning people about slim possibilities of the paint, the clear finish falling off. when I warn people, I'm being a bit over the top, because it's not really that highly likely it's going to happen. But I have to say it because there is an issue, has been and continues to be an issue with Fender finish, and it's cost me and customers a lot of time and some shocks, which we could well do without. But for some reason, there's an adhesion problem on some of the Fender USA and Mexico, has been on their finishes, and so you can mask off to protect the fingerboard, and if it's ready, if it's had its time on this planet, this finish on the side can just come flaking off at a rate of knots. Now the truth is that can happen on older guitars anyway, but the one I did the other week was a left-handed Tele, USA Tele, and you could see that where the finish was applied over the fret ends in a very nice sort of seal in the fret ends type of mentality, but you could see that there was something had pushed away the finish, like an air gap had developed under there, like emissions of gas or some sort of fermentation or oxidation or whatever. Anyway, it had pushed away the finish, and so it was kind of, there was just pockets, and you could obviously see into them, and it was sort of certain that it was going to come off at some point, and it only took a touch of the masking tape for it to come off, and it came off in great big crescents along there. That's where it wanted to come off, and I had to take time and basically peel back some of it, soften up all the sort of edges, sand it back, and then build it up again with polyurethane finish, tinted, and then kind of sand it all flat and end up wire wooling it to a satin finish to blend in. I mean, it was fine, after, but it does take time, and there's quite a lot of sitting at the kitchen table at home or the dining room table, painting, coming back, painting another layer down the side, coming back, doing some more, and I probably did about 10 or 15 different coats in total, just building it up, sanding some of it back off to get the to sort of get leveler, and then sand some more off and then put some more on, and so on, until you get a nice cover, a nice smooth uniform cover. So we could do without that Fender, and it has happened on some Mexicans, but I think it has been mostly the USAs that get me really worried now. So anyway, so as you can see, what I'm doing here is I'm using my masking tape to mask off the fingerboard here, so I can use sandpaper and various grits of micromesh to sand and polish out the frets, and then once that's done, we can we can oil the board, clean everything up, oil the board, put some new strings on, and we'll be done. And we can check the action and tweak the action again to where we want it. I'll do that here, but I'll probably also play it a bit at home, just to get a feel for where we are. But all is good. I've got Ryan brought me around a guitar today, which is a Schecter Sinister Gates thing with a Floyd Rose on it, and it's a sort of shop second with a bit of damage on the finish. So I'm going to try and repair this little triangle of cracked away paint. I don't think certainly not going whole hog and doing a professional repair, so I'm going to do a best we can to minimize it without spending lots of paid hours on it, basically, because I don't think it would, if you're doing it properly, it would be more or less a refinish, but it obviously was sold at a sort of B stock or second sort of price, but we'll do what we can. So I'm wondering if we're just running into the slightly too wide to fit into here now. So I got to use some thin strips just to get this finalised. That's time for the bin. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off camera while I do the polishing stuff, because it's a bit noisy and boring, and I'll come back on when it's time to put the oil up and strings on. So I'll see you in a minute. Okay, we're back. Polished out, oiled, new scratch pick guard screws. Oh, there's a bit of glue there, needs to come off. Yeah, everything cleaned up, lovely. Come off of there, come off of there. Glue. It's always the way, isn't it? You can't get that last little bit of tape glue off. Right. Okay, we are ready to put some new strings on. So, and then what I'll do is I'll finish off and take it home tonight. I'll take it home and just double check the action at home. But we just want to get it together now. Let's put this back on. Where's it? Oh, it's just a disc. There's no slots. I see. There we are. Okay, standard set of nickel wound D'Addarios from 45 to 100 gauge. And we're almost there. What I'll do is I'll snip off the excess string, go down into the thingies, tuning machines. Right, let me just uncut these. Uncut, not the word I'm looking for. Cut. Run a bit late today, but that's okay. That's all right. It's called getting back into work. Okay, 3 and 4. 1, 2, 3 and 4. Here we go. Up and over. Make sure that's good on there. That's good on that. That's good. That's good. That's good. Right, how much do we need to go into here? Well, on a regular guitar, I do 2 winds past there. Let's see how that looks, because quite a bit goes down into here, doesn't it? Maybe it doesn't with this. Yeah, it does. Bend it over. If it might be too much, actually. I'm not a bass player, so I don't regularly do this. But if it is too much, we'll come backwards. It's not that far off, really. Obviously, we want it to come out from the bottom of the peg. That's about right. I can live with that. Whoops, no, it's not. It's coming off the edge. There we are. Get it onto the saddle, for goodness sake. Okay, next one. So that was two tuners past the, if you get my drift. I've always liked these split post tuner things. I've never had a problem with them. Found them really reliable. And they just seem a really smart design from day one, really. Good old Leo Fender. Leo Clarence Fender. Clarence Leo Fender. One of the two. Anyway. Okay, yeah, I've mixed up all my saddles for the action. They're all the same spacings, but I have to adjust the action separately again. That's okay. So this is about it for this one. The good thing about bass guitars, in my experience, is the nut is usually pretty good. Not always, and it can be broken sometimes, it can have other problems, but on a Fender like this, the nut is not in any way as critical, and people might disagree with me, but I don't find it anywhere as critical as it is on a 6-string. And obviously they're much bigger slots to begin with anyway, so you've got you can see clearly that it's free or if it's binding or whatever. So it's actually, in some ways it's easier to work because, you know, a 10 or 8 gauge slot, or if you even go as low as that, but, you know, very light, very small slot on a 6-string can be just like a slot that you can't see into, whereas these are very clear and distinct half semicircular shaped cuts into the material, easy to access and clean up and adjust. But like I say, they rarely need it, which is very good. Okay. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is about that. And we'll set it back up to the action I've got written on the board, which I'll take a snapshot of anyway, so I can set it back at home. And we'll just, I'll tweak it at home and make sure it plays the way I like at that action. And that was the intention, to keep it as nice and low as it was set, and just clear up the extra slap that we had. And the slap is almost always, in my experience, caused by the highs and lows, the hills and valleys in the guitar's topography, or neck's topography. Lovely, rubbish away. Okay, I think, apart from a little bit of the adjustment, as I say, that's done for now. And thank you for watching, Connor. I hope that's an interesting little quick run through what we did. Nice and clean down there. Re-anchored the bridge so it's solid. Anchored the strap button so it's solid. Changed that, sprayed those and worked them hard. Cleaned up everything. Cleaned up the headstock. Oiled the board, cleaned it up, and we got rid of also the fretware that was down there as well. So thank you for watching. I'm going to go home, get something to eat, late, but that's no problem. We're back in the saddle, on we go. See you later.